Welcome to today's webinar, Higher Education Marketing in the Age of AI, how ChatGPT helps you work smarter, not harder. I'm Mallory Wilsey, the VP of Marketing and Demand Generation at Element 451, and your moderator today. Today's webinar is presented by our very own Artis Cadu, our CEO and founder. Artis is a highly accomplished entrepreneur, technologist, and educator with a passion for AI and data-driven solutions. As the CEO and founder of Element 451, he's spearheaded the development of a cutting-edge student engagement and enrollment management CRM that leverages AI and analytics to optimize outcomes for your higher ed institutions. So there is truly no one better to present on this very topic than Artis. I have a couple of very quick housekeeping items to cover before we dive into the goods. So today's webinar, we've advertised it for about 45 minutes, although I can say from watching yesterday morning, this session is so rich with actionable content that we may wind up going a little bit longer than 45 minutes. I do hope that you will be able to stay with us until the end, but don't worry, we're recording the webinar and it'll be available for download by the end of the week. So if you have to leave early, don't worry at all. We will give you early access to that recording. Just keep an eye on your email. We'll be sending you a note when the content is available, most likely Friday morning. During the webinar, please feel free to ask questions. The Zoom control panel has that question feature. You can send questions directly to me that way. And with any allotted time that we have left, we will do our very best to answer as many of your questions as possible. Now, of course, we've also opened up that Zoom chat room. So just make sure that you have your share settings marked to everyone. And feel free to share your ideas, ask questions, and just interact with others during the presentation in that space. And if you're sharing any takeaways on LinkedIn or other social networks, don't forget to use the hashtag EngageAcademy. And finally, please help us help you. We will be sharing a quick post-webinar survey after this session concludes. And truly, your comments and ratings are appreciated, but they also influence topic selection for our future webinars. And the time is right to get those ideas to us as we're planning out our next quarter of webinar content. So I will chat a link to that survey a little bit later, but you'll also get a follow-up email encouraging you to submit the survey shortly after we conclude today. Let's just get going. Artis, I'm going to turn this session over to you. So excited to hear all of your tips today. Let's get started.
Thanks, Mallory. So given that everybody here has somewhat of a level between, hey, I've heard a lot about this in kind of the news or from my kids or from somebody else, I wanted to get a really high level overview of what ChatGPT is. And when we start thinking about, when you look at ChatGPT, it's just Clippy, right? It's just Clippy, but it's, when you uncover it, well, actually, no. The only thing that ChatGPT and Clippy has actually in common is Microsoft. Microsoft is a big investor in the company OpenAI. So ChatGPT is really a language model. So it's an AI model. It's developed by a company called OpenAI. It's also designed to understand and respond to natural language text-based inputs. So you give it some text, very similar to a chatbot, and it's going to give you some output back. Think Siri, but more advanced and flexible. During today's presentation, we're going to be using chat.openai.com. That's where ChatGPT is housed, and that's where you interface with it. So if you don't have an account yet, or if you need to get into it, I would highly recommend you go and get an account. You don't have to do that now. You can just follow the presentation. We will have a lot of the prompts and a lot of the instructions later provided, alongside with a recording of the presentation. So you can just copy and paste a lot of this stuff into your ChatGPT sessions later. So why should we really care, right? So what is this thing and why should we care? Everybody has said, hey, it's really magical. You can give it some text and it can give you responses back really interestingly. But when you look at it, when you think about why should we care about it, is that these large models give you the opportunity to essentially personalization becomes really easy with it, right? So we use it to create highly personalized targeted content. We can customize messages, ads, and even campaigns to kind of fill in our target audiences. We think about efficiency, right? Efficiency in how we can automate and time-consuming tasks. Think about FAQs and from chatbots, like that's using ChatGPT behind the background, like Elements. Chatbot is actually powered by OpenAI and the same technology. So scheduling appointments, providing guidance to students, right? Chatbots, like I mentioned. The last one that I wanted to mention, or why should we care, is that these language models or something like ChatGPT allows you to make information more accessible, right? So access and accessibility is important. So when you think about how can I provide the same information in different languages, or simplifying it for, different levels of reading and so on and so forth, becomes really interesting use case for that as well. Translation is very easily done through these. So you can ask it to give you the same information in a different language, and it will actually provide that for you. So today, what we'll be doing is that we're going to be talking about prompts, right? The prompts and how this works. So the idea of this language model is that you give it a prefix of text, which is this prompt, right? And then it guesses what the next word is going to be, right? And kind of the large language models are basically being trained to predict the next word by feeding all of the available information on the internet. And what's happening is that when these models got trained, it took everybody by surprise, right? Including the people who invented them, right? They said, these language models are not just guessing probabilistic what's the next word going to be, but kind of the combination of prediction of the next word and the next word and the next word. It's really producing this body of text that's showing a level of reasoning that's really intelligent and has never been seen in any AI system before. And that's really the fundamental kind of excitement about this, is that until now, we have not seen this emergent behavior and this ability to predict the next and the next and next words to be very coherent, right? So when you think about, in this case, it's like we think we're giving it a prompt, we're giving it some prefix of text, and then it's going to give us other text. In this case, like a dog bark. But if we look at another example, right, one of my favorite kind of use cases around this or mental model of how to think about it is Wheel of Fortune. In Wheel of Fortune, you have a category, and then you have to predict a phrase that is similar, that falls within that category. So it's similar to what we're doing here. We're giving ChatGPT some context and some prompts, and then it's going to predict kind of the next body of text or the next word by word by word to come up with. So in this case, it's like I have A in here, right? So higher education A. If I continue, it's going to say admission, but you can probably guess, because you're thinking about this, it's like, okay, admission, toward admission, like you can just throw some stuff in your chat if that's something that you want to do. But the phrase is admission to college, right? But now let's change that prompt, like let's change that category or that context, and let's say legal terms. So when you say legal terms, and you think admission, it's like, well, okay, like they can be admission of assault in this case, right? It's the same word, it's the same letters, the same amount of letters, but the context is different and it's generating a different meaning. So ChatGPT is doing the same thing. It's taking that input and it's deriving meaning out of it, and it's giving you text that is contextual to what those prompts are. Today, we're going to be focusing on what we're calling prompt building or prompt engineering, so to speak, right? So we're basically writing prompts, and it's really interesting because there was a tweet not too long ago, and my wife she's an English teacher, a high school English teacher, and I told her that, being really good at English is the best language right now to, the most popular computer science language. And the reason for that is because we're giving these models English, right? So we're writing in English and we're trying to produce output from that. So that's what prompt engineering is. It's like you're really an engineer because you're producing this prompt, this inputs to get some outputs. So today we're going to be focusing on kind of 5 use cases, and we'll dive into the content, right? I just wanted to give you guys a lot of the context beforehand. But when you look at the 5 different cases, we're going to focus on tone. right? So the use case and tone is like, okay, we have a bunch of content, but how do we change that content to personalize it to a particular audience, right? How do we adjust it to be based on audience and desired outcome? We're going to focus on creating subject lines, email and email marketing. It's all about great subject lines so we can get engagement and opening them. But then we'll see a couple of use cases on how we can do that for SMS messages as well. We're going to focus on personalization, right? So again, how do you adjust the, so how do we adjust the content in here again in personalization to make it fit a particular use case or a particular audience? Creative direction, it's how do we, kind of get ideas for our content around aligning messages with the brand or aligning messages and graphics and so on and so forth. So we'll take a look at that. And then idea generation. So strategies for generating creative and effective email marketing ideas that are matching with your audience. So with all of that being said, I'm going to switch my screen to actually get into, the use cases. So we're going to actually start, doing some work here. So let me do that. Give me 1 second here. All right. All right, so I'm going to go to my next screen. Now, a lot of this stuff is going to be provided for you, but if you haven't seen ChatGPT, again, I'm under chat.openai.com. This is a third-party product, right? So it's open by OpenAI, but they have an API as well, and so on and so forth. So what we're going to do today is that I have prepared a series of prompts in here that focus on tone, subject lines, personalization, idea generation, and creative direction. We're going to tackle these one by one, and we're going to go through them and kind of test them out in ChatGPT and see the output. And as I do that, I'm going to explain a few of the examples or the kind of the structure of those prompts, so you have an idea of what are the areas of change that you can change and you can manage yourself. The first thing that I'm going to do here is that I have an example email, and I want to, this is an email that's from the dean of a particular school. It's being sent to students, and kind of, it's pretty generic, right? But for Element University, right? And it's telling them, okay, this is a great fit. We have a lot of programs and so on and so forth. So pretty generic email in here. But the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go big, right? We're going to go right in. So this is a great prompt. What we're doing here is we're going to tell ChatGPT to essentially do a couple of things with this particular prompt. We're giving it some context, and what we're telling it is that we're telling it to act as a content editor. So the first thing that we want to do from that email is to analyze the content of that email and to give us some ideas on things like line editing, structure, organization, tone and voice, the content accuracy, clarity, and then grammar and spelling, and then some formatting. So we're going to tell it to give us some of that feedback. And if you look over here, we're basically priming it. We're giving it the context that we want to be, use best practices and so on and so forth. Now, I'm going to go quickly through a lot of the other prompts. You're going to get these prompts after this presentation, so don't worry. You don't have to copy and paste, or you don't have to, write this really quickly. So what we'll do is the first thing, we're going to copy this and then paste it in ChatGPT. But there's two things of note in here. One of them is we are pasting this prompt and we're telling ChatGPT, respond with ready to acknowledge, and I will paste my first text. So we don't want to paste the text right away. We want to paste it as a separate chat. And the other part we're telling it is that return only the main response and remove any pre and post text. So two techniques in here, which are, really, really important, right? So let's copy this one and let's actually go into ChatGPT and start entering that prompt in here. All right, so the first thing, so what you notice in here is actually doing exactly what we told it to respond with ready to acknowledge it. Now we're going to go back and copy that content of that email. So I'm going to go referring to this back over and over again. So we're going to copy the content of this email, and we're going to go and paste it in here. Now, as soon as I do that, ChatGPT is actually going to follow up with the different messages in here. So the first thing that it did is actually, it didn't quite give me a good answer in here, right? So one of the things that I want to do is regenerate that response. So there's a lot of times when we're telling ChatGPT, if we're not getting the right response, then we probably want to regenerate that, right? So it's all about the experimentation. And we should be acting as engineers and curators of this stuff, right? We shouldn't be taking, everything for granted that it's giving us. It kind of makes stuff up, right? Based on what it knows or based on, so it's your job to ultimately look at the output of the content and say, oh, okay, this is what I was expecting, but I'm kind of, it's acting as an assistant for you. All right, so what it's doing right now, it's telling you, okay, it's giving you some feedback, and I like this one because it's giving it in my format that I told it. And it's saying, okay, this piece is from blah, 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 so on and so forth. So the recipients will have access to the tools. So it's kind of doing a little summary, but then on the line editing, it says it seems to be pretty well written. Do you notice any major line editing? However, it might be a good idea to use the recipient's full name instead of just their first name, especially if it's an official communication. Great, because it understands it's a little bit more formal, right? So the structure, organization, tone and voice, the tone and message is friendly and reassuring, which is appropriate for this type of communication. It might be a good idea to use a more formal tone. So again, it's kind of understanding some of that stuff, right, based on the language. Now we're going to move forward, right? So we have a lot to cover. So you can kind of read it on your own later on, but let's move forward. One of the next things that we want to do is we want to ask it to, hey, recommend some options for tone and voice. And my audience is, in this case, we're going to say high school students. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it as a follow-up to here. So what ChatGPT does, it actually, it has the context of the prior prompts, and now you can kind of start building things on top of it. So what's happening up here is that it's telling me, great, here is some more conversational tone, an inspiring tone, informative. So these are some of the ones that might be beneficial or that might connect with my audience, which is high school students. I can regenerate this again, and we'll see if it comes up with different ones. Conversational, encouraging again, empathetic, right? So inspiring. So it will come up with some similar but different ones. Now, in this case, I've gone ahead and say, okay, you know what? Sure, I'm going to take some of these tones, but I've done, this before. And one of the next things that I want to do is now take one of those tones, and I'm going to tell it, okay, now I want to rewrite my message. In this case, rather than picking one of these messages, I want to go a little bit far so you can actually see how the message itself is transformed, right? Because this is very formal. If we give it more empathetic, it's going to change it slightly, or it's going to change it in a way, but I want us to have a very stark change. So I'm going to rewrite the message in a playful and humorous tone. So if I do that, it's going to give it back to me. And here we go. So, hey there, undecided high schooler. The point here is that we're not going to read all of this. And if you look over here, it's kind of even giving Dean of Fun here, and I mean Dean of College and Human Sciences. So it's putting this really nice spin around it because it's playful and humorous. So the next thing that we wanted to do here is kind of continue on this path, right? And the next thing we want to do is like, okay, you know what? Now I want to write a subject line that kind of fits that same tone as well. So let's do that. I'm going to continue on that. And as we're doing this, we're going to go a little bit quicker through some of these prompts, right? Because there's a lot to cover. And I want to make sure that you guys have you kind of know all these techniques, and then you're going to get the prompts separately anyway. So rather than reading all of the stuff that it's outputting, which is, amazing and phenomenal, we're going to do that later. All right. So it gave me a bunch of subject lines. Not bad, right? I mean, it's pretty good. It's like, life's too short to pick just one major. Join the exploratory club. So who needs majors anyway? Let's explore together. So the idea here is that this content the person was not decided. They hadn't picked a major. So it's giving us some ideas in here. All right. So let's continue on. Now, rather than me putting all of these prompts one by one, what we can do is we can ask ChatGPT to basically compile all these prompts that I've given it into one command. And you can do that by saying, in this session, I gave you a bunch of commands, compile them all together into a single prompt that will generate similar output. So if I do that, it will actually give me a description in here of our prompt that's combining all of that stuff together, right? So it's saying, give me, the line editing, the structure organization, give me a subject line, and so on and so forth in a playful and humorous tone. So you can use this line for when you're experimenting with other kind of multi-step prompts and you want to basically put something together that is just one prompt, right? And the other part that you might want to add to this later is I did this before, and it gave me this particular prompt. And what I did, I just added the return the main response. And the only other thing was respond ready. So those are the only two lines that I had added to what it gave me on the combined prompt. All right. Whew, I feel like we're going really quick in here. So hang on with me. All right. So we're done with tone. Now let's go to subject lines. So the next part is what happens. We don't know what good subject line looks like. We have no idea, right? We have no idea what it looks like. We have no idea how to, structure one, like what are some of the techniques that marketers use, like all of these things, we have no idea, right? What's going to resonate with our audience? Well, here are some question-based prompts that can give you, some of those insights. So if you copy some of these in ChatGPT, is going to give you some of those insights, like what are attention-grabbing subject lines for email about, and you can give it a particular topic, activity, program, whatever, or the content that you have in there. So let me see here. So what are some ways to use humor and wit in email subject lines, and a few other ones. So we're going to use these to start thinking about generating some of our subject lines. And we're going to use this prompt here that's telling us, hey, what are some attention-grabbing subject lines for an email about applying to college? So let's use that one specifically. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to create a new chat. And I'm going to go to, so here we go. So we're going to create a new chat, and what it's telling us is it says, get ready, soar to college. Your college journey starts here. Unlock your potential. Boy, I can swear I must have, like seen this in every single, email going out there around applying to college. So pretty good, right? We're just telling it that particular prompt. But now let's continue a little bit further, right? So in this case, what we want to do is rather than just telling it, that specific one, we wanted to prime it to do something a little bit more, right? We wanted to say, hey, you're a marketing expert and your job is to write attention-grabbing content that meets the best practices. Some of those best practices are things like keep it short, use action-oriented language, personalize the subject line with first name, use numbers and emojis. That's an interesting one. Ask a question and be clear and specific. And in this case, we want to write 5 subject lines that for emails about applying to. And what I've done here is that I have added, school in parentheses, because you can kind of change that to your own school later on, or just leave it as a token and replace it later from the CRM. So I'm going to actually grab this whole prompt in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to edit that first one. So rather than opening a new chat, I'm going to edit this one and paste that particular prompt. So here we go. What it does now, it's giving me, hey, here's join the school community and less blah, blah, blah. Ready to make your next apply to school here. I'm going to refresh it a couple more times to see if it generates some more prompts for me. All right. Again, you can ask it and it will write some of these times, right? So if you're not happy with them. Great. So now let's continue with this, right? So the next thing, I'm going to have a follow-up prompt that says, what are some effective subject lines for re-engaging prospective students? So it gave me some, but now I want to continue with another topic, or kind of, again, thinking about that audience. And it's like, I want to re-engage these prospective students. So it's giving me a few of them, come back to school. Here's what you've been missing. We haven't heard from you. It's not too late. So essentially, we're kind of trying to re-engage prospective students that have been going dormant in here. You can see how we can give it some more context and you'll generate more. I can go back to some of the prior prompts and regenerate those ones as well, if that's something that I want to do. We can go back here, and one of the things that you're like, okay, I don't want to use numbers, I just want to use emojis, and let's see if that actually is going to give us some emojis here. It's not giving us emojis. So you got to play around with it a little bit more, right? So we can tell it, or you can actually put that in here specifically, and it will put those emojis in there for you, right? So you can kind of modify these prompts. If it's not giving you kind of what you want, you can modify it a little bit more. Okay, so the next thing, like I said, I'm going to give this effective. I'm going to continue here, and here we go. So a bunch of output. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to ask it, can you suggest some subject lines that incorporate the fear of missing out principle, right? And you can use this one because that's a principle that's in marketing, right? You know, those apply now, or you're going to miss this, or buy this item now because it's going to go out. So that's a technique that's used quite a bit. So let's use that open prompt, and now it's going to change some of those subject lines that it wrote before, right? So don't miss on a chance to apply, limited time offer, last call for the application, join an elite. So some of these might be a little bit generic, but you can see how you can give it more context in here around, you know, this subject lines for applying to school as a first-year student. You can kind of change those audiences and you can get different results in here as well. All right. So now the next thing that we want to do is like, okay, this is for idea generation. It's giving you a bunch of those prompts, but how about the other way around, right? So we want to generate a prompt from a subject line from an email. We already have the email, but we want to generate one that's from that particular email. So when we go here, I'm going to copy this one. And basically, I'll provide you a marketing email I've written, come up with a subject line that's clear and intriguing without being too long. So that's the prompt that we're giving it here. So let's go to a new one. All right, here we go. It says ready. So it's ready right now. I'm going to copy my same email that I have given it before. I'm not going to give it my subject line, but let's see if this one is actually going to give us some interesting subject lines in here. Okay, explore your options at university for this email, blah, blah, blah. So we can ask it again and again, and you will give us different kind of subject lines, right? Now, again, we can continue our work and tell it, hey, why don't you use emojis or use other things as well? But in this case, we also want to change this, and we want to basically go ahead and change that prompt. So rather than providing a subject line, we wanted to provide an SMS message. So let's go ahead and do that in here. So we're going to modify this one. And like I said, we want to constantly be experimenting. So it's going to generate different text every single time. So let's go ahead and copy that same email that I had before. Here we go. Right? So it's giving me some different SMS messages. I can go ahead and here we go. Now it's giving me an even better one, right? Now remember that one of the things you want to go back, it's like, if you don't want some of these, great, based on your email, here is blah, blah, blah. That's a lot of pre and post text, right? So use that example that I gave you before where you're adding, don't give me all this pre and post, and then it's not going to give you that. So in this case, it's giving you some, that particular message that focuses on that email, right? So this is a version of that email in that SMS message. Of course, you can go in and change the tone of that. You can do all these other things to kind of follow through. The next one is that we're actually going to tell it, okay, write an email for a new program. And in this case, it's like, okay, we're launching an academic program name. It's designed for this particular audience. Here's the different benefits to it. And if there's an offer to it, in this case, a free application waiver or whatever. So we've put this together, right? And we've said, okay, for artificial intelligence program is designed for working professionals, and the features and benefit online classes, star faculty, Google partnership, and an application waiver as the offer. But obviously that can be very different in here. So let's go ahead and create a new one and put this in there. So dear recipients, we're excited to announce a program in artificial intelligence, blah, blah, blah. Well, I keep using blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a better phrasing. So it highlighted the program's online classes with the benefits to the online classes, star faculty, Google partnerships, cutting edge tools. So it's kind of expanding all of that. It's amazing, right? And of course, at the end, it's like apply now. It's even giving you the call to action, sincerely, and then your name. So it's giving you that email that we want for that particular program. Of course, you can go in and you can say, make it shorter, make it long, change the tone. So you can start seeing how you can use the other prompts that we had before. All right. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is, okay, how do we take this and we start adding some personalization? We can start personalizing different aspects of this prompts, right? And the first one that we're going to start with is we're going to create an SMS message to invite somebody to a special event. We're going to mention the date, time, and location, and we're going to mention the benefit is, or whatever the main benefit. So in this example, what we've done is we've gone in and said, we're going to invite prospective students to an open house, right? That's the event. We're going to mention the date, time, and location. But if you look at what I did here is that I put these as little tokens. And that's really interesting because I can define these later on. So I can use the same prompt now, but change what those mean. And when you're in the context of the CRM, like Element, for example, what we're doing is underneath, we're injecting all these pieces of information to tokens or to prompts, so it can be personalized at that student level or even at that program level, right? Or at that email level. So in this case, what I've done is I've said, okay, use emojis, no hashtags. So sometimes when you're doing short text in ChatGPT, it thinks that it's going to be a tweet, right? So it has short hashtags in there because it's being trained on a lot of the Twitter data as well. Those are public data. So just, you got to tell it no hashtags. So let's copy this one and let's go back here and we're going to go new chat and we're going to tell it, okay, here we go. Not bad, right? Hey there, we're inviting you to our open house on March 15th at 12 p.m. Eastern in the main hall. Come tour the campus and see what we have to offer. Let's generate another one, right? It uses emojis. Hey there, we'd love to invite you to join our open house. It's in the main hall. Come on our campus and see what we have to offer. Very similar, right? But you can kind of modify it. But when you're doing a text message, you're very limited. So the other thing that we might want to do in here is we told it use emojis, no hashtags, but we can kind of come in here and tell it, keep it message short to 150 characters, right? So if I come in, I copy this and I go back, because in some cases it might write like longer. Yeah, here we go. So it's like, in this case, it's like writing a really longer email, but I can just tell it, keep it to a particular length. And this is important because until a couple of weeks ago, ChatGPT didn't really understand messages, or didn't understand math around how much stuff's supposed to output. So now it's really good at that. All right. The next thing, we're going to go fly quickly through this, is how can we make this so we're injecting something in here. So we want to personalize it for students who are in state versus out of state. We want to call that out in our tweet, right? Or on our SMS rather. So what I've done here is basically I've said call out traveling based if the student is, and I said out of state, which is kind of this token here. But I have defined that down here. So I said out of state is yes or no. So in this case, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to copy this and again, paste it in here. And I'm going to modify what I have, and I'm going to submit it. So it's going to write a message, and that's it, right? It's writing the message. It's pretty good. Doesn't mention anything about out of state. So the next thing I want to do is I want to change this to a yes. And you can see how now, there we go. So now it will actually call out through the campus. Coming from out of state, no problem. And it's giving a little airplane. I can regenerate that again. and it will give me something else. It says, come to our campus, even if you're out of state, right? And it's giving you little travel components in there. So pretty cool. All right, so that's the personalization. You can kind of see how you can add all these different tokens. You can define them below. You can define some conditional components or logic in there. The next part that we're going to cover is, oh boy, idea generation. And get ready. This is a really good one. So when you think about idea generation, you think about, you think about a particular audience and you think about a topic, right? An audience and a topic. And you want to generate topics for that audience that resonates with them, right? And what we've done here, we have a huge mega prompt that is going to generate some ideas for us that are going to focus on things like novelty, and it's going to focus on good writing style, and it's going to use what we call the FFGA, fear, common fears, frustration, goals, and aspirations associated with these topics. So if you think about it, it's like if you want to write a content, if you want ideas on how do you reach and what's important to a particular audience, for example, working professionals in a particular region or working professionals in a particular industry or something like that, this is a great way to do that. So let's kind of copy this one and see what it generates for us. All right, here we go. So here we go. So it's starting already. So we told it to write topics and subtopics around that to focus on these 4 different things. So the topic is choosing a college major. Well, the subtopics are around fear and so on and so forth. It's like, how do I choose a major that aligns with my interests and goals? Overcoming the fear, choosing the wrong major. What's the goal to connect the major with a fulfilling career? And then the aspirations, find a major that you're passionate about, right? And here's some example posts. Make people think. What do you think if most important when choosing college major, passion or practicality? Why? So you can see already that it's giving us some content and some topics that your audiences it resonates with your audiences and they're thinking about. So now you want to develop those. You can think about writing a college essay, standardized test, and so on and so forth, extracurricular activities, a letter recommendation. Now, this can be something that will generate a lot of content, right? So we can keep asking ChatGPT to keep going, and we're going to use this prompt. Please continue exactly where you left off. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it that, and it will kind of keep going. So here we go, more topics. Time management becomes important. Financial aid and scholarships become really important. So if you're using that FFGA, it's like the fear, like understanding the different types of financial aid. The researching part is anxiety. So it's kind of building stuff, visiting college, building a resume, example post here around building a resume. It's like sharing anecdotes and stories. So I can keep going. So more, right? Again, so you can keep doing this with different audiences, with different components that we entered here at the top, right? High school students who are trying to get into college. All right, so that's one of them. The next one is, okay, how about writing a full campaign, right? A full set of campaign messages based on a prompt. And what we're doing here is we're building what we're calling a campaign bot. And this campaign bot is specializing in writing email sequences. And we're telling it the topic here. And here's the topic, applying for admission to Element University. And we're telling it, the output. So we want markdown syntax here for some formatting or whatever, if that's something we want to do. But we can certainly change these, right? So if we don't want those. But in this case, again, following through, we're using the AIDA formula to write 3 potential subject lines. So remember, focusing on FOMO, fear of missing out, the AIDA framework, kind of focusing on let's see over here. I don't remember. I don't want to read all of my prompts, but let's copy this one and let's actually start building one. So here we go. Well, if you remember, ChatGPT can ask for things in text. You can ask it to put something like ideas in a table format. You can ask it to give you code. You can ask it to give you the formatting in different ways. So in this case, I just asked it, hey, give me a markdown. And if you look over here, it's building the sequence, right? Applying for admission to Element University. The first email, introduction and program overview, subject lines, don't miss out. Your future is waiting. get ready, right? So it's giving you a few options in here. The message, pretty clear. Subject to campus life and community, the third one, scholarship, financial aid. The fourth one, final call to action. I could have told it to write me a 6 email, sequence and so on and so forth, but it's just writing one right now. So amazing, right? So when you think about it, it's like, boom, I have a, 4 email sequence and all I gave it is the topic. Now we can continue on that. All right. Whew, we're getting towards the end here. Lots of stuff, right? All right. So creative direction. We're not going to touch on a lot of these because you can kind of play around with them as we're coming to the end. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight is that now that you want to kind of have some creative direction on your things or whatever. So we've put together some prompts around this. For example, can you suggest some unique and eye-catching images to grab the attention of a particular audience, right? How do I use images to convey a specific emotion or feeling that resonates with that audience? What are some creative ways to visually represent the benefits of in this case, like particular program or activity talk about like, how can you help me come up with a visual concept that aligns with my brand's value and messaging? And then you can tell it, my brand's value and messaging, my brand's value is mission oriented and my messaging is, so on and so forth. And then it will kind of give you some ideas on how to come up with some visual concepts around that. So we've included a whole bunch of them in here. Anything from how can I incorporate user-generated content in social proof with my advertising to boost credibility, to what kind of visual metaphors or symbols can I use to create powerful, memorable advertising. So all of these are open questions, but you can ask an expert to do this, but it's going to be much, much easier if you ask ChatGPT because it has the knowledge of the internet in there. And all you have to do is just prompt it and give it the right context, and it's going to give you that. All right, I think we're done with the prompts. A lot of stuff in here for folks, for those of you who kind of were new and didn't even know what it is, it's like, hopefully now you've gone to that, it's like you're the Batman of ChatGPT, right? Or at least at level 3. So I'm going to kind of move back to my presentation. And I have a couple of things that I wanted to kind of go through here. And one of them is we're at Element 451, we're working on putting some of this stuff in the context of the CRM itself, right? So when you're writing in Element via conversations, we're basically putting similar things in here. We're trying to put the generative AI, like changing the tone, making the stuff shorter, making it longer, improving the writing, right? So it understands, injecting the personalization directly in there. So these are tools, and it's all powered by OpenAI, by the same APIs that it's in ChatGPT. So we're adding these things in Element 451, and that's kind of what you're seeing here. A huge, because Element is, the content generation is not just sending emails or conversation back and forth, but it's also, campaign building, how do you write best subject lines in there? And I just don't have that in here in my screenshot, but you can think about anywhere where you can enter content and modify content and build content. These tools are going to be available, and they're available in. The other part that we're injecting in here is the bot capability, right? So rather than us having to respond with messages that we have a pool of information, well, let's just let ChatGPT or let the bot provide that response, but we are actually injecting and priming it with your context of that particular question. So we're going to your pools of content. We're saying, okay, what is the question? Based on that, we're pulling information. We're giving it as context above. And then we're telling it, okay, based on this context, why don't you give me what you think the answer is? And that's how oops. Wow. Sorry about that. So I want to kind of go back really quick here, presenter view. All right, here we go. So that's kind of what we're doing. I'm going to hand it off back to Mallory to kind of wrap us up. But, I'm hoping that you've gotten a lot out of this today, right? And a lot of this stuff is going to be available. And we're going over a little bit. Mallory did say that we're going to go over a little bit.
I warned you, but if the active participants in the chat room are an indication of the larger audience, it sounds like they too have taken away so much from the last 45, 50 minutes. So artists, thank you so much for leading such a terrific session. Now, folks, I think we have—
There are a lot of questions in there, right? So I haven't looked at the chat yet, but I really hope that, we can have like hours of back and forth and kind of questions around
It's
this.
so true. It's so true. And we have been answering all of those questions in real time in the chat room as we've been getting them. Actually, it's as if one of our attendees was like channeling you. He asked a question and then you actually answered it about 20 seconds later, just very naturally. So it's like we planned it that way, but we didn't plan it. It's perfect. So folks, thank you so much for joining us. Because we have been answering all of your questions in real time, I believe that we can just wrap things up here. There's just a couple quick resources I want to direct your attention to. I have already shared in the webinar chat link to that quick webinar evaluation. Like I mentioned earlier, your feedback is super valuable. We have also shared a link to all of the prompts that artists talked you through today, as well as a blog post with a couple of our favorites. So you can download that guide or access the blog post. But what you're seeing here on your screen is the first of 4 in our AI podcast series in collaboration with Enrollify. So if you're attending today because you're interested in how AI can help your organization work smarter, not harder, I think you're definitely going to find additional inspiration in this podcast series. I will share a link right now in the chat, but don't worry, it will be included in our follow-up email as well. And then last but not least, if you enjoyed today's webinar, go ahead and register for our next one coming up at the end of the month. Now, at the end of last year, we did a first of its kind State of Enrollment Marketing Technology report, also in collaboration with Enrollify. We are revealing the results of that report and sharing that white paper out at the end of this month. So we will explore industry baselines for what schools are spending on their technology, what features are high on the wish list, and more. If you want first access to the white paper, register for the session. And even if you can't attend live, of course, you will get that webinar recording. So the links are all in the webinar chat. And yes, Danielle, you would like a copy of the chat Q&A. I am sure that we can download that and make sure folks can get access to it, because there is a lot of gold in here as well. Thank you again, everyone, so much. Artists, thank you for sharing so much knowledge. I think we're all Batman and Robin now. At least that's what we're channeling going into the rest of our afternoon. Thanks, friends. Have a wonderful afternoon. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for attending.
Thank you.